Good morning again. Welcome to our channel. Hey, today we're going to follow up that last video with this video dealing with small hive beetles. Pain in the neck that we all deal with each year, and kind of, I don't know, we kind of just tolerate them. And I'm not a very tolerant person. I just want to get rid of them, which is not going to happen. But with these two products that I'm going to try this spring, we're going to see how well they work and how beneficial they are to us and the bees. Like I said before, my goal is to have the bees being productive for us, making sure that their winter stores are ready, making sure that the extra honey is available for us instead of working on controlling hive beetles. So the two products that we're going to review this year is the Guardian and the Beetle Blocker. The Guardian is like a two-part device. The first one is used with your entrance reducer, and you screw it onto your entrance reducer like this, and the way it is designed and made, it prevents the beetles from getting in. It looks really simple. It takes the bees a little bit of time to get used to it, to understand it, but then they get right in and they don't even worry about it. The beetles, on the other hand, because of the way their body is and how they can't negotiate 90-degree corners, makes it impossible for them to get in this way. Okay, so this is the base of their product. The other product they have is for upper entrances. If you choose to use them, you can put this over a 1-inch hole, and again, it has a guard on it to keep from rain getting in, and it has that issue with the 90-degree corner that they can't get through. Hive beetles are, I don't know, they just kind of crash land. They can't hover, so they can't hover and climb in. So they crash land on the front of the hive or on the landing board, and they just can't negotiate getting in. So that's how Guardian works. And we'll be doing an interview today, first with Mike Munson, who is the designer. He's a backyard beekeeper from Kansas who saw the problem and came up with this solution. So that's going to be our first interview. Our second interview is going to be with Fred Schroeder. Fred is from Oklahoma, and he is the gentleman who's putting out the Beetle Blocker. The Beetle Blocker is this device here. It's basically a shim that goes between your bottom board and your brood box. It sits on like this, and it has these 6 holes. Now they make this in a 8-frame, 10-frame, and a nuke setup, so you can put them on all your whatever size boxes you have. You can use this with, and basically, again, the beetles can't negotiate a 90-degree turn, and what happens is the beetles will get underneath, and they can't. There's a little flange around each hole, and they can't make that corner, that turn. So the shim keeps all the beetles down on the bottom board. They can't get into the up into the brood box, and that's how this product works. So today we're going to have our initial interview with Mike and Fred. We're going to be doing it over Zoom. I hope it works out okay. I hope it looks okay. It's something new because of COVID. It's hard to get face-to-face meetings with people, plus distance. So we're going to try to use this technology and see how it comes out. And I hope you enjoy these two interviews. We'll start off with Mike, and then after that we'll go right into Fred's interview with the Beetle Blocker. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you learn something. And both of these products, to be honest, are very cost affordable in my mind for a backyard beekeeper. If I had 1,000 beehive colonies, it might be different. But with the size of my apiaries, this is a great option. I think affordable option to not eradicate, but just kind of ignore these beetles and let our bees do their job. So let's see what they have to say. We'll talk to you real soon. Bye. Okay, welcome back. Hey, that was our interview with Mike and Fred. I hope the explanation and discussion was valuable. Sorry for this video being a little bit long, but I wanted to make sure that everyone knew what these products were about. Get the information from the people who are making these and who have the best knowledge. We're going to follow this video up with the installation. When my new colonies get here in nukes, when I install them into my horizontal hives and my Langstroth hives, I'll be using these products. What I'll be doing is I'll be using the Guardian on both of my horizontal hives, and I'm going to have two Langstroth hives side by each at each location. One will have the Guardian, the other one will have the Beetle Blocker. The horizontal hives, the Langstroth hives that have the Ross rounds on them will also be using the top side Beetle Guardian and seeing how they work with upper entrances. So now we just wait for the bees to get here so we can install all this and see how it works out. Hope this has been beneficial, and please hit subscribe down below, hit the bell so you'll get notices on these updating videos on these products, and hope that we hear from you soon in comments. Have a great day and come back to the channel soon.
The next morning.
I'd like to introduce Mike Munson from Guardian Beehive Entrance. We're going to have a little discussion today on his product. One of my projects this spring is to try to come up with a method for backyard beekeepers to control those crazy small hive beetles that drive me nuts. And I found Mike's product online, and he and I are working together to do a demonstration this year. And I think I'm just going to ask Mike a few questions and let him explain all about his product. And first of all, I'd like to find out, how long have you been involved with beekeeping, Mike?
Hey, Tim, thanks for having me on today. This is really great. This is going to be the start of my 7th year. I've been beekeeping for about 6 years, so I'm pretty much an infant, in beekeeping. I don't think anybody ever gets to a point where they know everything. And but this will be my 7th season starting up. It'll be the Guardian's 3rd full season. And so far we're looking forward to getting into spring and getting through 2020 here in the near future. So
great. What got you interested in trying to develop this product?
Well, when I first started, like a lot of beekeepers, I started with one hive, which did not survive the winter. I was trying to be a treatment-free beekeeper, which for me did not end up panning out. I lost my hives middle of winter, I believe due to heavy mite load, not really knowing what I was doing as a first year. Next year I had 2 hives, kind of started over, went through the season, noticed a lot of small hive beetle activity. Like every new beekeeper, I was very, very intrigued with my bees, and I spent a lot of time with them, and I still do. I go down and sit down and just watch. I get in front of the hive and sit there and try to see what's going on, figure it out, understand it all a little bit more. And this was my 2nd year, and I didn't really, I'd heard of small hive beetles. I'd never really paid much attention to them until one evening I was sitting down at the hive watching, and the bees were coming in and out, and here comes this black bug, lands right on the landing board. Well, it didn't really crash landed onto the landing board. They can't hover. So he comes in, lands on the landing board, and runs around a little bit and runs right into my hive. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? And as I sat and watched this a little further, it became a pretty constant activity. I could see beetles land. And again, this was right at dusk, just right when the sun was starting to set, and these beetles were landing on the landing board and running right into the hive. So that, kind of prompted me to start doing a little more research on these and watch them a little closer. And as we got in closer to fall, since these were 2 brand new hives again that year, I didn't do a honey harvest. did some inspections. I did see a few beetles, which started to be more concerning. And later on in the season, then I really started to focus in on a way that I could keep these beetles out. Because what seeing that they were just landing on the landing board and running right into the hive pretty much untouched, it either meant that the opening was too wide, there weren't enough guard bees, my bees weren't doing what they needed to do, maybe too much area for them to cover. So I, started with some prototypes, and I thought, well, I just need to reduce the entrance down a little bit and try to match it a little more to what you see in the wild. Wild bees do not have a wide open entrance. They've got a small in and out that everybody uses. It's not, it's not wide. It's big enough that they can guard the main entrance to their hive. And so that's kind of where I started with the thinking of reducing the entrance down and then actually preventing the beetles, or trying to prevent the beetles from entering. And since their shells are hard, they're not articulated, they're a one-piece deal to where they can't navigate like a regular beetle could, who could bend his upper torso and flex up and move in. So that kind of got the whole ball started, and we started prototyping and moving forward that way. So
see, yeah, my daughter kind of calls them flying turtles, because they fall on their back, they can't move around.
yeah.
And the biggest thing that drove me nuts my first year was I'd open up my hive and you'd see all the black beetles running around. I'm like, what are these? Then I started doing research, and I tried the beetle blasters, with the oil and that diatomaceous earth.
Yep.
And it seems like it takes so much effort for the bees to control that. They will control them inside, but I want them doing their job, not doing that.
Yeah.
So how does this device work? How do you install it?
Sure. First off, it works off of a 90-degree principle. Since their shells are hard, they're unable to articulate around a 90-degree corner very easily. They can try it, but a lot of times they can't hang on because their front feet, I'm going to call them, are not able to attach to the surface and move on up. And so the Guardian, basically what it is, first off, it's comprised of two pieces. For those that don't know, it's in a two-piece mold setup. This allows to be taken on and off throughout. If you want to take it off in the wintertime, you can just pop out the centerpiece and screw it right back down. It won't hurt a thing. But anyway, the beetles, when they come in and land, they come down on this top surface and they're unable to just flip over the lip on the Guardian here by the 90-degree angle. They're unable to flip over and get back in there. And so what they'll usually do, and what I found with beetles as I've studied them, is they're a lot like mice in that they like to get along an edge of a wall, and they kind of hug that wall as they move around because they don't like to expose themselves to the bees. If they expose their underside or under a wing, the bees are able to bite or sting to actually kill the beetle. And that's another reason why we shrunk the entrance down, was to allow the guard bees to do their job and to keep the beetles at bay. Our product is a beetle deterrent. It is designed to help the bees do what they do in nature, and that is protect the entrance from invaders. So basically what we do is, on a standard entrance reducer, you've got a 4-inch slot and a 1-inch slot, depending upon what you're doing, what time of year you're doing it, and how many bees you've got inside. If you few bees inside, you ought to be running the 1-inch entrance. And what we do is we attach right onto that wooden entrance reducer, and there is a top and a bottom. The bottom of the Guardian does not have a shroud piece across the bottom. That lies flush against your bottom board. Okay. And once you install it, you need to make sure that it lines up, and I'll try to show it here, with the slot on
Yep.
your reducer. Yep. So there's no obstruction. And these slots are big enough for drones and queens to enter and exit with no problem. But
Okay.
basically, you can install on either entrance, the 1 inch or the 4 inch, because the Guardian is divided in the middle to allow you to be able to reduce the entrance down even further if you want to put that on the 1 inch piece. And you screw it to the entrance reducer, and then you make sure the bottom is completely flush here with your bottom board.
Okay.
So I've had a couple people install them this way, which is not correct. And
Right.
you know, you do have to pay attention when you install it and make sure the landing board is in the proper position with the outer shroud in the proper position. Otherwise,
Now,
you're
those octagon shaped holes, that's in case the beetle lands on top so they fall through it?
that is more for rain, because what we don't want is for rain to come down and hit that and then run into your hive. And so that's more of a rain debris, you know, because when the bees land, I mean, and we have seen it where people not running bottom boards have installed a Guardian, and the bees will actually crawl up through that hole. The hole is big enough for a bee to pass if they do want to come up from the bottom. When they do that, they will dislodge some pollen. So that's why we recommend a bottom board, or at least a board across the bottom of the Guardian to, you know, to prevent that. But that is, the beetles can fall through it, and I've seen them fall through that hole before. But the reason it's perforated is more just to save from having water inside the hive. If it were to rain heavy, it would act like a, you know, like a funnel and funnel that water in if you weren't careful.
Well, I got mine last week, like I talked to you about. Now, what I have is I have some hives that I use for comb production, my horizontal hives, and I have some Ross rounds that I'm using for comb production. My honey production hives are flow hives. I don't know if you have any experience with the flow hive. The flow hive, because of their base, they do not have the ability to put a entrance reducer in it, because there's a metal flange on the bottom. What I've had to do is I've had to build basically a board with the Guardian installed and screw it right to the front and block the whole front.
Okay.
Because the way just the landing board is at an angle, and then inside, because it's a screened bottom board, it has a metal screen that has like a ramp. And I've tried trimming and cutting and making entrance to do. They just don't stay in. So that's what I've done with my flow hives. I've actually screwed them right in there.
Right. And we've had that, you know, we've run into the same question from some users wanting to know if, you know, if they're compatible with the flow hive. And, you know, they are, as long as you have, you know, you have to make an adapter. There's just no other way to do it. They will work the same way they work on a standard 10 frame or 8 frame Langstroth. But yeah, you're going to have to actually make something that works for it.
Now the upper entrance, I've looked at that, and I've had that installed already on some of my supers, and they work basically the same way, right?
Yep. The upper entrance, and the only difference is it works over a 1 inch up to a 1 1/4 inch hole. I mean, you can go down to a 3/4 inch hole if you want to, but it works on a standard 1 inch hole. And basically it works the same way. We've got a 90-degree lip to prevent those beetles from crawling over. We've got a rain cap over the front so we can keep all the rain and moisture out of the hive. But it works exactly the same way as the lower entrance, and creating that and letting the guard bees guard the upper entrance. And we've had a lot of good success with people using these on queen rearing as well.
Right.
They're putting these right on the queen rearing boxes, because those are reduced size colonies usually anyway. And they've had really good luck with them too. So
awesome. It's just amazing how, looking at the product. It's really simple. It's a simple concept, and it's great. You know, there's so many things out there today that are complicated.
Yeah.
You know, so what does a beekeeper have to keep in mind while using these to have the best results?
The biggest issue that I've seen so far is when people's woodware doesn't match up and you get a gap between boxes, and especially if you're making your own boxes, you just need to be very, very careful that the woodware lines up and doesn't create any gaps, because those beetles will search around the hive and try to find an alternate way in, and that's the same with the screen bottom. You need to make sure that your screen bottoms, the mesh on the screen is at least small enough to keep those beetles from going up underneath, because you will get a few that will search around and try to find somewhere else to enter the hive. So that would be the biggest number one. Number two, I just make sure you watch for, in the fall when the leaves start falling, you don't get a leaf or something that lands on your landing board and touches up on the Guardian, because that debris creates a runway then for the beetle to eventually find his way to get in.
Gotcha.
But those would be the two biggest issues and things to watch for. Just depends on, every beekeeper is different. Everybody's setup is a little bit different. You ask 10 beekeepers, you're going to probably get 10 to 12 different answers. So, it kind of beekeeping to me is local. I'm a local beekeeper. I'm a hobby beekeeper. I, right now have 8 hives. I lost a couple here in the recent freeze, which was absolutely devastating to much of the state and much of the US from what I've read. So beekeeping to me is local. And, you kind of have to adapt things for your situation and how you're doing things yourself.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm a firefighter by trade, and firefighters are very resistant to change. Yeah. And you have one thing that you need to do, and you find 10 different ways of doing it. Right. And that's why I think I fit so well into beekeeping, because, I'm new. So I like I said, I use the flow hive system, and you would not believe how many beekeepers here in Kansas, oh, you're killing your bees, it doesn't work. And I'm like, well, I had 4 harvests last year. I pulled 30 pounds out of each hive 4 times. Yeah. I didn't hurt one bee. Yeah. I'm really looking forward to this spring to watching this work. I think the big question that people might have is, does this eliminate your beetle problem?
Well, from all the tests that we have run, and we started in the very beginning on, when we ran our first prototypes, and over 1 week in that first summer, we ran some efficacy trials and tried to figure out, how effective is this product on our hives. And in the first week, and we would go out morning and night, and basically take a very small keyboard vacuum, and we would vacuum out all the beetles caught around the outside of the prototypes trying to get in. And in the first week on one hive, we had 350 beetles that we captured and killed, and we kept them in a jar. I could post videos of you and show you. And we did still have a few that get in. Nothing is 100%. But right now we're running about 75 to 80% reduction in beetles in your hive with the Guardian on. Gotcha. And that's provided, all your woodware, your wood hardware is all solid, joins together nicely, no cracks. Depends on what kind of cover you're using, your top cover. If you're using something like a Bee Smart or something that has some air ventilation, you might get a couple beetles that come up through the top and still go in. We still recommend running either a beetle jail or a beetle blaster, or we don't really care for the Swiffer sheets, because we get too many bees that get tied up in those Swiffers. And as a hobby beekeeper, we love our bees. I mean, we absolutely love every single one of them. And, you open that up and see 15 bees caught in a Swiffer, and it just breaks your heart. So we recommend beetle jail or a beetle blaster still inside. Beetle blasters, we don't like using oil. We like using diatomaceous earth, DE, just because, it's scary to think
I've spilled oil in the hive before.
Exactly. And you do it one time, and then that hobby beekeeper heart of yours just freaks out, and you want to start washing everything and making it clean again for them. But We do recommend some secondary traps, just because you will get a few that, nothing,
Right.
like I said, nothing is 100%.
Right.
But we're seeing great number reductions once we put it on. We usually recommend everybody go through, before you install, to actually go through your hive and squash and kill as many beetles as you can, just so
Right.
you're kind of starting with a clean slate when you install the Guardian.
It's funny. I watch a couple people on YouTube, and there's one guy in particular that every time he opens up a hive, he's talking about whatever he's talking about, but he is busy. He kills every beetle he sees.
Yeah.
My wife says that she thinks I'm crazy because I had a bee follow me in the house last year, just one bee, and I'm like walking around. We have a sun porch I got my big banana tree and all this stuff I'm growing. And I'm trying to catch the bee to let him outside. And she goes, "It's a bug, kill it." I go, "No, it's not a bug, it's a bee." And you're right. You get this bond with them. It's
I mean, they become your pets. They really do. And you love them and care for them like your pets. And I can't explain. And I have a hard time explaining them to people so they understand that, because you're right, that is the mentality. Most people see them as bugs, and they're afraid they're going to be stung by the one that flies right by their arm or something.
Right.
And it's beekeeping is such a wonderful experience. I've loved it from the start, and that's why I designed the Guardian. When we first started Guardian, we put it on I can't think of what it's called now, where you have people bid on the product if they want it to go into production.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Kickstarter, excuse me. Yeah, Kickstarter. We started with a Kickstarter program, and we had pretty good interest, but there wasn't enough there to actually fund the project. So we actually self-funded, because it was something to us that we used it, and as a backyard beekeeper, it worked for us.
Right.
And so we thought, why not help other people out and get the product out there? And so we self-funded and moved things forward. And we actually, in the very beginning, when we installed our very first package, it's such an exciting time. You open that hive and you dump your bees in,
right,
and you close it up because you don't want anybody to fly away. But then you end up with a handful that are stuck outside because you've either put grass in the entrance or done something to keep your bees in the box, and your heart just melts for the ones that are outside. And one of the first products that we ever designed was a one-way door that went on the entrance. And we never did end up following through with it, just because it was, to produce it was, it was a very time intense process to, make sure everything went well. But it's just that bond that beekeepers have with their bees. And
right,
it's amazing. And they're amazing creatures,
Right. And they hold such an important part, especially living in the Midwest. If you can't tell from the way I talk, I'm from the Northeast. And in the Midwest with agriculture, I've really learned how important a bee is to everything we consume, everything from beef to vegetables and plants. They really have a big impact.
Right.
So Mike, we're going to install these in the spring and do several update videos.
Okay.
And I'll probably invite you back probably mid-season.
Okay.
And we'll talk about what's happened so far. It's not a competition or a comparison who's better. I have another product that I talked to you about. They're just doing it a different way.
Right.
And just like beekeepers, you mentioned everyone has their own method of doing things. And I thought that I looked at your product and this other product, and they both looked very strong. So I just want to show people these are two options out there. And so people can actually see more than just, I've seen your videos that show how they work, and that's great. But I thought I'd have a series of videos over the growing season because you're lucky. You're a little bit challenged up here. I was pulling my hair out last year because of these crazy beetles.
Yeah.
I probably had 100 to 150 in one box,
Yeah.
and it just got discouraged. Now the bees took care of them, but after I took my pollen patty off, you could see the beetle larva, and it just became a nuisance.
Yeah.
And I'd rather have them working hard, producing honey and brood instead of. And the amazing thing that I don't know how many people have noticed this, the bees will develop their own little beetle jail. They'll put them in a corner and keep them there. And instead of starving them out, they feed them.
Right. They
And I'm
actually
like,
tickle the bee's nose, and tickle him in such a way that he, regurgitates up some food for him and will actually feed him. Yeah.
that's just amazing.
Yeah.
All right, Mike. We look forward to talking to you later on in the season.
Wonderful.
And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Really
And any questions, Tim, if you have any questions, just let me know. I'm happy to help in any way that I can. And if you need anything at all, just holler.
Great. All right, Mike. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tim.
Bye-bye.
The very next evening.
Okay, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. I'm here with Fred Schroeder from Timber Hollow Raw Honey down in Oklahoma. He's the owner of the Beetle Blocker that we spoke about in the prior video. Wanted to talk to Fred a little bit about his beekeeping experience and to tell us more about this Beetle Blocker. So, Fred, let's start with how long have you been involved with beekeeping?
Right about 20 years.
Okay, great. And I know what interested me in trying to get into getting rid of these beetles. What interested you in developing either the Beetle Blocker or really getting involved with this nuisance?
Well, it just, I noticed as years went on, I was getting more and more, where they were, starting to become a problem, especially on weaker hives or something like that. They get to the point where it's about to take over. So I started looking for some way to alleviate that problem. I'm not actually the inventor of the Beetle Blocker, but Clark Taplin from Franklin, Tennessee, he actually invented it, but I purchased the company from him after looking around different methods of how to control the beetle, and I just liked the design and everything. It just seemed less invasive. You didn't really have to change anything on the hive itself. So that's kind of how I ended up with that. So
I see. Can you go over the basics on how it's installed and how it's used?
Yeah, the Beetle Blocker is basically just a shim that you just set it right on top. You put your bottom board down. This goes right on top of your bottom board. It can be a solid board or a screen board. Doesn't make any difference there. And then your first brood box goes on there, and your hive right above it. You just make sure that you put the dark side down, and the light side goes up. And how it blocks the beetle is it has the curvature to the get it situated there. It's curvature to the holes,
Right.
so that the bees, they're flexible, so they can go right around that and into the hive, no problem. But the hive beetle, this little short guy, can't bend. So as he tries to come down and he can't reach around and get a hold of the other side, the gravity gets hold of him and he falls down. So that's what keeps them out.
All right, great. Let me ask you a question. I just thought about this. With the shim being in place and the metal diaphragm there taking up a lot of the space, do the bees have a hard time ventilating? Now they're just limited to those 6 holes versus a whole open space.
That really kind of seems like it depends on the individual hive. I have some of them that they don't seem to have a problem ventilating it, but I do have hives that'll seem like they will beard more out there.
Really?
But it also seems to be more of an individual hive type deal, because I've had several different hives beside each other, and one one will, beard really big on there and others won't. Of course, I've seen that without a shim on there at all too. So I don't know that that's really the cause of it. But.
Right. So what kind of results? If you were to say a percentage drop in beetles in an individual hive, what percentage of your beetle load actually dropped after you first started using the shim?
I would say, if I had to pick a percentage, I would say anywhere from 90 to 95%. I mean, it dramatically reduces the number that are in the hive as long as you have a tight hive. You got to make sure there's no other entrance into the hive. So.
I know last year it drove me absolutely nuts. Every frame you take out, you'd see them scurrying around, and I'd rather have the bees making honey for me and them instead of having the bees in their little beetles in their little beetle jails. And it just seems like you could almost see the frustration with the bees with these crazy beetles. That's why this year I'm doing two things. I'm looking at this beetle management as well as swarm traps. These are the two different projects that I'm doing this spring with my YouTube channel, because I hear a lot of people talk about how to trap bees, different I'm a firefighter by trade, and in firefighting, there's 100 different ways to do the same thing. And I'm finding really quickly in beekeeping, it's the same way. Everyone has a different recipe, so the problem with new beekeepers is they hear little bits and pieces of different methods, different things to do, but there's really no follow through. So this interview here is basically telling the guys how your product works. I'm going to have continuing videos throughout the whole bee season, right into the winter, on installation, hive management, and actually watching the beetle population. That's going to be one of the focuses. Now, the beetle blocker, is there any need to take it off in the wintertime?
No, I leave them on my hive in the winter. There's you can depending on what your mite management situation is. I happen to use oxalic acid vapor.
Right.
I leave the shim on to treat the hives with that. Doesn't seem to make any difference there. I haven't seen any need to take it off. So.
Okay, great. Well, Fred, thank you very much. We'll probably do one or two more interviews throughout the season. Give you an update on what's happening here, and then I can get your input on what we find. I'm going to have two different locations, and we'll see. One area I know is a little bit more prevalent to have beetles than the second area. So I'm hoping everything works out well. So Fred, thank you for your time, and we'll talk to you real soon.
Okay, good talking to you.
All right.